Hey everybody, Douglas Scott McCarron again. I want to talk about the Rapture. As you may or may not have known, there were a lot of people expecting a rapture a few days ago, and a lot of people were making fun of people who believed in the rapture, and a lot of people who believed in the rapture were giving away stuff and now feel foolish and don't know what to do. I just want to give my thoughts on it. Um, I think it's Thessalonians where there's one point where Paul talks about people rising up. And that's been taken to go up in the air because he talks about being in the air earlier in the writing. But generally, in the apocalyptic era, where they were looking for some reason other than, you know, growing up, working, getting old, getting the wife pregnant or getting pregnant, having some kids, working around and then dying, that there might be something more to life. One of the beliefs was that you're going to die, but that there would be a day where Christ would come back, all the people would rise up out of the ground, the ones who were selected would go into the city of God, and the rest were in trouble. Um, but my reading of it and my studies of it are that there wasn't actually anything called the rapture where some select amount of people are grabbed up and taken up into the sky and into heaven to be with Jesus. I don't know if this is totally accurate, but my impression is, especially in Calvinism, there's belief of the select. I believe it's the 144,000, and there's the few selected that are going to be picked, and the rest of us are screwed. And seeing as I am a Catholic, and a lot of Protestant groups don't think Catholics are actually Christians, I guess I would be one of them. But, Paul's kind of interesting because he sort of got that Platonistic idea of the soul going up in heaven, but he's also got that there's a Jewish idea that you just get buried in the ground and at some point God will, have the Day of Atonement. He also seems to have Merkava streak to him too. He's very interesting to study. And of course, who knows who Paul is and who knows who put Paul's name to letters and things like that. So it's really kind of hard to tell who Paul was and what did he actually think, because there's so many people who are using him to support their opinions of what happened. But as far as the rapture, whether you believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God, or you just think it's a bunch of collection of historical things to learn from, or however you look at it, one thing you always have to keep in mind is that when you're reading it into your understanding and perception of things. And that's why so many people kind of get in these big religious arguments, because they're basically arguing over, I'm right, your interpretation's wrong. I'm the one who knows what's going on. Kind of, when you're born as a child, the vast majority of us kind of assume these parents were put here for us. It takes a long time to have it dawn on you that they have a life outside of you, because as far as you're concerned, everything's about you. And that's part of what I think happens a lot in the rapture is, I'm the one who sees, I'm the one who knows, I'm the one who understands. And especially back to Paul, because he's arguing, he had this big fight with the James community over who was in charge of what the truth was, because his way of looking at things wasn't quite in coordination with what James and the Jerusalem community thought after Jesus was crucified. But, when you're a child, I mean, he has that whole I'm the one, I'm the one. You can almost read him like he's just this sort of self-impressed 20-year-old kid who says, I saw something special, therefore I'm the one who knows what's going on. I don't know. I'm not Paul. You're not Paul. You don't really know what he was saying. But what you do have is your interpretation and your belief. And quite often people act like they're Paul because, they recognize this fervency in their belief. And I'm the one who sees, and I'm the one who knows the real thing, and I got to share it with the world. So there's a lot of, for those of you who knows anything about Christian history, there's a little bit of conflict in it as to what happened. But as children, we grow up thinking you're the one who knows what really is going on. There's kind of like this big secret that, your parents just don't understand. And I think for a lot of people, that's what's going on when they read the Rapture. You're somebody special. You're somebody important. You're the one who's picked. You're the one who knows. And it's kind of hard to get to, I'm just another person and there's nothing special about me. Because that's kind of how you got to, I think, approach God. The whole idea that I'm select and important and the one who sees is kind of like trying to be godlike. And you aren't. You don't know when the rapture's coming. You don't know how other people should live. This is just reading. Generally what people do is they have a feeling I'm right and there's a central feeling, and then they go through the gospel looking for what supports it. It's kind of, what's his name, Darby, the Scottish guy who would have some presentation of what he thought the scripture meant and then individually pick out little lines to support it without including the other, rest of the chapters in the writing. But the other thing about keeping the rapture and yourself being godlike and knowing what's going on is within the Bible, the whole reason we're all here, which is we all got cast east of Eden by God because we ate the fruit of the knowledge of God's and knew what was good and bad. And then there's this, friendly little being standing there with a sword or something keeping us all from going back. So you're kind of doing exactly the thing that is why we're out here. And it's exactly the thing that will keep you out here. It's not humility to sit around and think you're the one who knows what's going on and everybody else is wrong. God doesn't call upon you to have the correct doctrine, calls upon us to be just and merciful. Well, of course, he also calls on killing all the Canaanites. So there is that. So I get the fervency for believing in the rapture and thinking you were right and you did the right thing. But I just suggest to you that kernel, I've talked about this in many of my videos. There's this central kind of feeling point, like I'm the one who knows. I'm the one who knows what's going on. My beliefs are right. My beliefs are good for me. You can't challenge them. Well, it seems to me you got to keep kind of stripping those off to actually get to a life that's a life of living a bunch of beliefs instead of living life. And you also don't get to meet the one whose name is I am, the verb to be, the one who bees. If you're in a bunch of thoughts and doctrines, you're worshiping thoughts and doctrines, not be. So, those of you who made fun of the people who believed in the rapture, I kind of get it, but at the same time, that's also being the one who thinks they know what's going on and being godlike and mocking people and who's right. I mean, it's kind of like everybody's doing the same thing. It just looks different because they're doing it a little differently. But, we're all sitting here being the one who knew what the truth was and being kind of mocking of it. It just seems to me, in my experience, that if you can like let go of that little central kernel, me, I'm the one, me, here, I'm the center of all things. If you give that up, if you quit trying to be gods and just try to be friends with God, you might actually get to walk back into the garden because you've surrendered the knowledge of good and evil and the knowledge of the gods. You can just go in there and enjoy the place and walk around. In Genesis, you have one Genesis story where God created everything and it was all good, and then you have the second story with Adam and Eve, and well, it's not quite so good. I think people try to mush these together and have them make sense, but they seem to me like they're just two separate stories that ended up in the canon. Got some bug flying at my hand there. You know, the Jewish community didn't look at what is known as the Bible the same way Christians do. It's the writings that got picked among all the billions other writings that was believed to be inspired by God or people who connected with God. But it's not really like in Christianity, a lot of it, the stories are designed to aim toward Jesus is the one. Judaism doesn't aim that way. It has a very different way of looking at what reality and what life's about. So, the rapture doesn't mean a lot to them. Mostly, my studying, the rapture didn't really start until the 1970s. There were a couple of books that a bunch of people who thought they were going to be the ones picked, that have the presumption that they were the ones that were good, that God would like. They all bought all these books to talk to themselves about how they were the ones going to be raptured, which again is thinking you have the knowledge of the gods, which is why you're east of Eden, out of the garden. So, be merciful to each other on both sides, whether you believed in the rapture or didn't. Because, we're all being right and thinking we're godlike and know the truth. And as far as I can tell, that belief is kind of the problem that keeps you from actually bumping into the one who is. All right. Thank you. As usual, if you'd like to donate some money, come to my site, tsmccarron.com, and you don't have to. Otherwise, I request that you go somebody who needs some assistance, especially in these times where the economy is very shaky. Go over and give them some assistance. We all need to help take care of each other to get to this change that's going on in the United States. All right. Thank you. Until the next time, Douglas Scott McCarron.